Hi everyone, and welcome to my Inktober 2018 sketchbook tour. I'm really happy to say that I managed to complete the challenge and I filled this sketchbook. It was really difficult, but it was an awesome and fun challenge. It's one of those challenges that really pushes you out of your comfort zone, and you end up drawing stuff that you never thought of drawing before, and in doing that, you can end up learning new drawing techniques, which is amazing. I also really appreciate checking out the Inktober hashtag and seeing so many incredible artists and their fantastic work. It's so inspiring, and I'm looking forward to sharing all my Inktober drawings with you in this video. In terms of the supplies I used, this is a Rowney Earthbound sketchbook. Then for the inking, I used Pigma Microns and a Pentel brush pen. For any shading and colouring, I used a bunch of Copic markers like these. And lastly, for any highlighting, I used a mixture of a white Prismacolor, a white GellyRoll, and a Uni-Ball white ink pen. And that's all the supplies I used, so here we go with the sketchbook tour. On day one, the word prompt was poisonous, and my first idea was mushrooms or maybe toadstools, but I've drawn lots of them recently, so I decided to attempt this drawing of a poison dart frog. So you can see in the background I added lots of layers of shading with mushrooms and grass, the moon shining down and illuminating everything in the scene, and then I focused all the colouring to the frog itself to make it really stand out on the page, and I was very happy with this to start the challenge. On day two, the word prompt was tranquil, and I knew I wanted to draw a cherry tree on an island in a lake. And then I added to that with a forest in the background and a couple of trees and a waterfall in the foreground, making it a very peaceful scene. This one was very complicated in terms of the layering of the shading, and the most complicated part was definitely the reflections in the water. The word prompt on day three was roasted, and I really struggled to think of an idea for this one, and in the end I drew this marshmallow being roasted at a campfire in a forest with the moonlight shining down again. This one ended up being one of my favourites because it's something that I've never drawn before, but I learnt a new drawing technique just by trying to create the roasted effect by adding shading and some ink patches around this side and then highlighting the edges with a white Prismacolor. I was really pleased with this one because I feel like it's really simple but effective at displaying roasted. After that, on day four, the word prompt was spell. And I really challenged myself with this one by trying to draw a hand. Hand can be so difficult, especially in this kind of pose. Then I added the spell and the magical effect spiralling outwards, with stars shining through. Then on day five, the word prompt was chicken, and I took this one very literally, so you can see a chicken sitting in a farm. I really enjoyed adding the feathers. I basically added all the shading first, and then I layered the feathers on top with a mixture of the white Prismacolor and the white GellyRoll. Day 6 has the word prompt drooling, so I decided to draw this dragon. It's obviously noticed this little red-caped character in the foreground, and it's drooling away. I used the same texture technique as I did for the marshmallow, which sounds really weird, but I added little circles of shading, and then outlined each circle with white Prismacolor. Then on day 7 the word prompt was exhausted, so I drew this little exhausted mouse sleeping on a mushroom sheltering under a leaf from the bright moonlight, and I was really happy with this as a very peaceful scene. Then moving on to day 8, the word prompt was star, so I drew this cat looking up at a star through the window. This one I was thinking about one of our cats recently passed away. He's called Charlie. He was an amazing cat, and he left behind his brother. So I was thinking about them the whole time I worked on this. It's something that I've been really struggling with, so there's a lot of meaning behind it, and that's why this is one of my favourite drawings of the month. Day 9's word prompt was precious, so I worked on a couple of drawings of gemstones. This one with crimson, cardinal and dark pink. Then here I used ice blue, sky blue and Prussian blue. Then I outlined everything with white ink and added a few more highlights and effects to make sure it really stands out in front of that background. Then after that, on day 10, the word prompt was flowing. So I wanted to have layered waterfalls. So you can see this large waterfall coming down into this pond and this flowing down into another pond. It was very complicated in terms of the highlighting and the shading and all the different layers I had to add. So it took a lot longer than I anticipated, but I'm really pleased with the result. The word prompt on day 11 was cruel. So I worked on this drawing of this snail in a very unfortunate position with this crow looking down on it. I gave little cartoon eyes to the snail as well. And I was really proud of how the feathers ended up looking. I spent a long time trying to create that layered effect, and this ended up being another one of my favourites. Then, on day 12, the word prompt was whale. So I worked on this fantasy drawing of a whale flying through the sky above a forest, with some colours in the stars and the moon shining down and illuminating the top of the whale and the top of the forest. A few clouds in the scene as well. At some point in the future, I would love to work on a more detailed version of this drawing because it was so fun and I just really loved the idea. Then day 13's word prompt was guarded, and I really struggled to think of an idea for this one. In the end, I opted for this cursed treasure chest, so you can see the skull with the red ribbons of smoke flowing towards the top corners of the page, with some rose thorns and some moss. And I enjoyed adding a bit more colour to this one to make it really stand out in front of that background. Then moving on to day 14, the word was clock. So I worked on this old grandfather clock. I really loved the idea of it being in this environment that has struggled with the test of time. So you've got the wallpaper falling off, you've got the mushrooms and the moss and all the marks on the walls and the floor. But the clock looks the same, kind of playing on the idea of time. Moving on day 15, the word prompt was weak. So I worked on this precarious looking bridge across this large area of water towards a cliff edge. So the challenge on this one was definitely the perspective, and I tried to make it look like this is the view of someone about to try and make the trip across this bridge. Then on to day 16, the word prompt was angular. I struggled with ideas again, but this one I decided to try something very different. This is a deer, a stag, in a low poly style, coloured in ice blue, with some snow falling down. It's in the woods, having some nice detailed grass in the foreground. I was very pleased with this one, and it's another one that I would love to try and work on a more detailed version at some point in the future. Day 17 had the word prompt swollen, so I worked on this pufferfish, a really funny looking character. I spent a long time adding the highlighting to all the spikes and the fins, and I enjoyed adding the pink colouring to the plants underneath as well. This one was really fun to work on. Then moving on to day 18, the word prompt was bottle, and I had the idea of working on a ship in a bottle, and then I adapted that to working on a ship sailing through the sea in a bottle, so you can see the sea splashing up against the glass. And I focused in on the details like the ropes and the sails and the masts on the ship. I would actually love to spend more time on a full version of this drawing as well, because this one was so fun to work on. The word prompt on day 19 was scorched. So I worked on this flower in the desert being hit by the sun. And I used similar techniques to the marshmallow drawing, as you can see with the textured effect on this side of the flower, where it's being scorched. Then I added the cracked desert around it. And I feel like this one is simple and effective, again, like the marshmallow. After that, on day 20, the word prompt was breakable. So I worked on this spider, under its web, between two fragile-looking trees, and it's all being illuminated by the moonlight. And I'll show you the spider closer up so you can see the details I added. Because I used a photo that I took in the garden as the reference. So I'll show you the photo as well. It's on my phone. There we go. Day 21 had the word prompt drain. So I worked on this funny drawing of this octopus lifting up the drain cover with its tentacles. And I really tried to make the tentacles stand out by adding a nice bright pink colour to them, and then the moon shining down and adding bright highlights to them as well. Then for day 22, the word prompt was expensive, so I worked on this drawing of gold ore veins being mined. And if I move the page, you can see that the gold actually has a bit of a shine to it. And that's because I used a Uni-Ball gold ink pen, which is awesome. Then moving on to day 23, the word prompt was muddy. And you can see I worked on this little kitten that's made an absolute mess through the house with loads of muddy footprints. And you can see I worked on a bit more of a cartoony style, just to add a bit of character to its face. After that, chop was the word prompt on day 24, so I drew this tree stump with an axe in it, and I put a lot of detail into the tree stump with texturing and shading and highlighting and moss and even the rings where it's been chopped. Then in the background I also added a bunch of cherry trees with the blossom landing on the ground. Then moving on to day 25, the word prompt was prickly. So I drew this hedgehog with a bunch of cacti. And I actually have a really funny story about hedgehogs. Recently, this is completely true, I found a hedgehog sleeping under my desk. It was it was a really crazy surprise, and it was just sleeping on its side. I put on some gloves and I helped it outside. We've got a bunch of them suddenly recently. I think they're all trying to hibernate, which is really sweet. Moving on to day 26, the word prompt was stretch. So I worked on this giraffe stretching up towards the top of the tree to reach the leaves, and it's got a nice smiley face. Then on to day 27, the word prompt was thunder. So I decided to go for more of a Halloween spooky theme this time, with some stylized storm clouds at the top, some lightning coming down and striking the top of the tower, and you have this ominous silhouette in the window. Day 28 has the word prompt gift, and I really wasn't sure what to work on. In the end, I decided to draw this bird, feeding her baby chick this nice juicy worm. Then on to day 29, the word prompt was double, and I decided to draw this fantasy landscape with double moons. The moons were so fun to draw, adding the effects and highlights and the inking and shading, and then I added a mountain landscape and a forest in the foreground as well. This one is another one of my favourites, and I would love to attempt a larger version of the drawing at some point. Day 30 has the word prompt jolt, so I worked on this electric eel with a fantasy style, and as you can see I really relied on the white ink pen to add that shiny texture, and all the electricity that's going outwards towards the edges of the page. Then on to day 31 for Halloween, the word prompt was slice. So I worked on this evil pumpkin with a knife. And that's it for my Inktober 2018 sketchbook tour. It was an awesome experience. This is actually the third year in a row that I've taken part, and each year I've ended up feeling like I've learnt some new drawing techniques, which I'm honestly super grateful for. And it's always so amazing to see how many people take part. If you're interested, I highly recommend giving it a try. I'll be sure to link the website down in the description box below. Be sure to let me know what you think of my Inktober drawings, and also let me know if you took part in Inktober and how it went for you. If you want to see more art videos, then feel free to subscribe, and any likes or shares on this video, they really mean a lot to me. If you want to follow my progress and see photos before I post these videos, then please check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you all soon.